You have been in the chip industry for a very long time, and contributed significantly to it as well. A lot of it you talked about. And you have seen us as a country take swings at it more than once. Where do you see India stand today? And what do you think public policy makers could do the most to really make sure that this swing we really succeed?
Yeah, I really do believe. If maybe 3 years ago, if you asked me this question, then I said not in my lifetime. Right. But I think a lot of things have happened on the ground. And also, political, geopolitical, all those things are kind of enhancing my belief, and also, the things that are happening on the ground. I think, from a policy or from the government, right, they're funding a lot of these big companies, subsidies and so forth, right? But I believe that in this semiconductor specifically, it is built by passionate people, smart, I mean, look at Broadcom, Qualcomm, Intel, anybody, right? They're all, they were not built by big companies, right? Nobody gave, big companies money and said, hey, go and do some chip, right? They could have, right? Yeah. But it's never been historically, right? Everywhere, right? Yes. So it's always been, from the ground swell, and then you get these geniuses, I call them, right? Who do this out of passion more than anything else, right? Yeah. So I think, we need to focus on that a lot more. Take a bet on these guys, right? And, fund the hell out, right? Maybe, initial days, right? You give them certain amount of funding and see, right? So let us say, give 100 companies, right? And then you kind of say, okay, this 10 guys, we should give them all out, right? Give them 1,000 crores, right? To build the next thing, whatever, right? Don't give them 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs or something, right? So I think, that kind of approach where you're actually taking bets on these passionate people, right, rather than the big corporates, right? They will do their thing, right? They will come in later, okay? So I would say, rather than funding a lot of these, type of companies, because they will eventually become followers rather than leaders. If we want to be leaders, right? These geniuses who are, scrapping around, in the periphery are the ones who are going to be leaders, right? Yeah. If we want to take leadership, if we just want to be, Me Too kind of a country, right? Then, give money to corporates and my fear is only with all this funding and all that is going on, right? We're talking about 1 lakh crore, 2 lakh crores in the next few years. What would we see in 10 years from now? Are we creating manufacturing centers, service centers for the foreign companies to come and use them and take, benefit out of it? Or are we going to have our own companies, Indian companies?
Like you said, solving Indian problems.
Yes. Solving Indian problems is actually solving global problems.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, there's a deep thinking we need to do now that now we've actually started rolling out.
Yeah.
Where do we emphasize, right?
Yeah.
And I think, private sector has to step up big time. Today is still a very government initiative.
Yeah. And why do you think that is the case? I mean, I've seen more and more people talk about it. The government R&D spend is more than the private sector, which in India, which is very surprising. And secondly, even the same semiconductor, I completely agree with you that there is a lot more happening on the government side than private sector side. Why do you think that is the case, and what could be changed? What could entities like NASSCOM play as a contributor to the cause?
I think, see, this NASSCOM and ISA and all these, right? They are very powerful organization in that sense, right? I mean, they've made a name for themselves, and they're the memberships, right? If you put all maybe the 20 NASSCOM members, right? They probably, their sales is more than $200 billion or something.
True.
Right? Combined, right? Or even more, right? So I think they have a huge influence on, how they look at it. And I always tell these guys, right? NASSCOM is supposed to be software folks. Now, you look at it, right? Hardware, software, there is a link and, it's good business for them as well, right? So instead of telling the government to put more money or telling the government what to do, I would think that, NASSCOM can do something, right? And say, okay, we'll create $1 billion fund, right? 20 guys, each of you put like $50 million, which is within their reach, right?
Right.
You create $1 billion fund and then, look at some hyperscalers that you want to make, which is going to help all your, NASSCOM folks, right? So things like that are very forward, thinking, and if you don't want to do R&D on your own, right?
Yeah.
So things like that that they could do. Again, right? Private sector needs to set up through and granted that it's hard to understand semiconductor business, and most of the founders are in a way, right, nerds, and they like what they do.
Yeah.
But it's for an investor to look at it and say, can these guys actually build product and sell product, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because selling in product is different from building the product, right? As you know, right?
Yeah.
They believe that these guys are good designers, but then now they have to touch. I always say, right, to make a chip, you probably have to touch 20 companies.
Yeah.
It's not like a software, right? You control everything, right? So these guys, right, are they capable of doing this, right? Dealing with the Chinese culture, Taiwanese culture, Japanese culture, equipment, and all that. So I think, the trust level is very low.
Yeah.
But I have a counter offer, right? What I'm telling them is, look, these are the geniuses, right? You are big corporate. You know how to sell. You know how to, take it to market and all that. You do it all the time, right? So you adopt these guys, right?
Interesting.
Right? You adopt these guys, right? And help them out. Maybe end of the month they can't make payroll. Okay, you pay, 1 crore, 2 crores. There's nothing in your thing, right? And you take them, right? I have an example, right? Let's say, TVS Motors, right? Go. Venu Srinivas. He's a very, very influential person, right? If he picks up the phone, and he calls, some automotive company and says, hey, I have this, I've adopted this startup, can you give them a chance, take a look at their product? It's
of course,
they will get the mind share, right?
Yeah.
And all that he has to do is, make a call, right?
Yeah.
So I think, they're not connected yet. Sometimes I see these, pictures, like Semicon, right? Prime Minister is there. And, they've got all these people surrounding him, this photo op, right? And I said, what's wrong with this picture? Where is the startup guy there? Right? There's the AMD, there's Intel, there's Applied, there's Lam, there's all these guys. But then there's no startup guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So although we talk about all this, startup, and all that, but it doesn't match.
Yeah.
Right? And that poor guy, is because Prime Minister is there, he can't even get into the arena.
Yeah.
So I think, there is a balance, right?
A balance that is needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.